G'day guys. This is a video request type thing. So I'll just show you the question that I was asked and why this video is being made. Anyway, so Scott W, 6 hours ago, he asked a question, do you think choline has an effect on fructose metabolism? Yes, I do. Conditions like non-fatty liver disease? Yep. Alzheimer's disease seems to have a relationship with high consumption of this sugar. Yes, it does. Yes, on both. On the first part, I'm doing a video tonight, which is this one. And then I also said on the second part where it has to do with, I've got a video that is one of the first methylation ones, and I've actually covered the points, the importance of, is non-alcoholic fatty liver a choline deficiency, and I make the case why it is, why I believe it is. I do have other studies that actually go into demonstrating a whole lot of mechanisms and the specific pathways and stuff like that, but that's for another day. I'm gonna that's a follow-on video that I'm gonna do in regards to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and stuff like that. I've already done one in regards to that, and I did jokingly say, stop reading my mind, Scotty, because there was a follow-on video about, I've sort of covered the vegan side, and this was against the actual one that I did about the vegans and choline and myelination and, neurological issues and stuff like that. So I've sort of been covering this point to show the importance of, eating a species appropriate diet and getting these critical nutrients in that regard. So we'll go to this. This is basically in Science Daily. This was a couple of, nearly 2 years ago now. It's something that I've been aware of, and it's just another one of those videos that I just hadn't done for but it was for me to do. That's the study that they discuss, which is in Aging Cell, Anatomical Society, and lifelong choline supplementation ameliorates Alzheimer's disease pathology and associated cognitive deficits by attenuating microglia activation. Okay, so now, rather than actually going through the study, which has some level of complexity, I will show some images from the study, but we'll go through this review of the study. So it's a bit more in plain English. This was done at the Arizona State University. Summary: in a new study, researchers revealed that lifelong dietary regime of choline holds the prevention of potential to prevent Alzheimer's disease. Obviously, they make. In the new study, biodesign researchers revealed that a lifelong dietary regimen of choline holds the potential to prevent Alzheimer's disease. Choline is a safe and easy to administer nutrient that is naturally present in some foods and can be used in species appropriate foods in good quantities and can be used as a dietary supplement. Lead author Ramos Velazquez and his colleagues at ASU Banner Neurodegenerative Disease Center Research Center, looking into whether this nutrient could alleviate the effects of Alzheimer's. Earlier this year, Velazquez and colleagues found transgenerational benefits of AD-like symptoms in mice whose mothers were supplemented with choline. The latest work expands this line of research of exploring the effects of choline administration in adulthood rather than in fetal mice. So the initial ones that they'd done were basically, which is the previous study, which was focused on primarily looking at, multi-generational, like mothers, getting choline supplements when at a fetal stage, and basically then the offspring showed that it had good capacities to identify things and stuff like that. And that's based on the other one that I did with the vegans, showing quite clearly that a good choline status improves brain performance. And even the children that were basically in the Kenyan study that actually had really good levels were performing way better. So very critical. And this is what they've seen also in other mammals, like the mice here, that they've actually supplemented lifelong now to see what happens to them. Not only to the young mice, how they perform, but, what is actually happening to the, to an adult mice or to an adult mammal of any sort eventually, We've had very limited studies, and it's very hard to do longitudinal studies in humans because we just live too long compared to mice. So it's much easier to do it in an animal study. But basically, all the animal studies and all the actual short-term studies where they look at people with Alzheimer's and all that, we've seen improvements a lot across the board. There's countless studies, and that's important. But we also need these sort of longitudinal ones to understand, what happens over a lifetime of being supplemented. And we can only do that with rats, unfortunately. That's the reality. The study focuses on female mice bred to develop AD-like symptoms. So these are mice that actually genetically, they deliberately make them capable, basically. So they deliberately have genetically altered them to make them very vulnerable to Alzheimer's, So, which usually in humans, it requires, this sort of bad diets and poor nutrition and stuff like that to actually create the conditions. Here, they're actually inducing the conditions and then try to see whether high levels of continuous supplementation of lifelong will actually prevent, even though they've induced it. So where with humans, we couldn't basically experiment that way. We couldn't actually induce on humans this condition and then supplement them to see will they develop or not. It's just unethical. So that's why you're never going to get that study. It's never going to happen. So this is all we've got. And it's a mammal. All mammals originate from rodent type creatures. So, dietary stuff, I agree. The dietary stuff is wrong. You can't do diets on animals because there's no way of knowing whether, because all animals have different dietary adaptations. Humans have a different, ruminant animals have a different, but one thing they all require is they do require phospholipids, they all require choline, they all require taurine, they all require certain nutrients. Either they biosynthesize them themselves or they get them in the diet somehow. So that's across the board. These important, like, your water-soluble vitamins, your fat-soluble vitamins, your minerals, important amino acids and stuff like that, essential amino acids, essential fatty acids. Every single mammal requires these things. These are diet, they're not exclusive to the human diet. They're in all species that exist in the diet of every single species. And that's important to understand. So these studies do have applicability to us, and to all other animals. If you're not getting enough, you're going to have problems. And, this is what they're looking at. So these sort of where we're looking at single factors, single nutrients, single vitamins or minerals or whatever, can elucidate or give us an insight of what could happen in this animal and potentially in us as well. Anyway, let's move on. So basically, given the high prevalence of AD in human females, like the study sought to establish the findings in female mice, results show that when these mice are given high choline in their diet throughout life, they exhibit improvements in spatial memory compared to those receiving a normal choline regime. Got it? So when you're getting just the normal, this is obviously induced, but let's say you've got genetic vulnerabilities, you've got other people in your family that have had Alzheimer's. Well, the normal range of choline isn't going to cut it. You better double your amount. Remember the genetics that I showed you? The vulnerability? I've got that vulnerability as well. That's why I supplement, because I want to have my marbles. I don't want to basically lose my marbles when I get to that sort of age. So I have to double my dose. So I make sure I get at least over a gram a day. That's my minimum as far as I'm concerned. But, most of the time I get more than that. I'm getting two grams all up from food and supplementation. There's no way I'm going to allow my brain to basically deteriorate. So I really focus on this. It's so important. So notably, findings published in July 2019 from a group in China found benefits of lifelong choline supplementation in male mice. Good to know, with AD-like symptoms. Our results nicely replicate findings by this group in female Velazquez says. So basically, they've got two females and males, different countries, different experimental group, giving high doses, getting the same results. Good to know. So we know that basically we've got confirmed additional research. So there's no basically saying, well, this group found, but no other group has found. Maybe they did something different, or maybe they, their data wasn't read properly, or they did some mistakes or some errors. So they've both confirmed each other in a sense, which is good. Different countries, US, China, perfect. Intriguingly, the beneficial effects of lifelong choline supplementation reduces the activation of microglia. Microglia are specialized cells that rid the brain of deleterious debris. All through this naturally occurs to keep the brain healthy. If they are overactivated, brain inflammation and neural death, common symptoms of AD, will occur. So basically what choline seems to be doing is it keeps it in the normal range. So it doesn't allow it to overactivate, and it doesn't allow it to underactivate. It keeps it in the normal range. It sort of suppresses it to the normal range, so it doesn't misbehave. So we see this, overactivation in people primarily who have got Alzheimer's disease or other type of neurodegenerative type diseases. And we see choline basically regulates it, which is really good to know. And because the last thing we want is inflammation and basically our neurons being killed. The least that we've got as we get older, we get brain shrinkage and we become dumber. Anyway, the observed reduction in disease-associated microglia, which are present in various neurodegenerative diseases, offer exciting new avenues of research, suggest ways of treating a broad range of disorders, including traumatic brain injuries, multiple sclerosis, and Parkinson's disease. So basically, all these type of diseases exhibit this sort of disease-associated state with microglia. So very important, this finding. So this can help a lot of people. So if people are in contact sports, they should be supplementing high doses of choline to protect their brains. So sports people. So if you're into those sort of things, activities, make sure you're getting good dosages of choline. If you've got basically, family history of multiple sclerosis or Parkinson's disease or other related neurodegenerative type diseases, you should also be on good high doses. You probably have those genetic SNPs that we talked about last time, and which make you more vulnerable in that regard. Supplementing the brain with additional choline. Choline acts to protect the brain from Alzheimer's disease in at least 2 ways, both of which are explored in the new study. First, choline blocks the production of beta amyloid plaque. So here we've got shitloads of studies and shitloads of big pharma chemicals and crap that basically failed to effectively deal with amyloid plaque. And here you've got, and we know that also taurine helps in clearing and reducing the inflammation associated with beta amyloid plaque. And the way actually taurine does it is slightly a bit different. What it does is it actually reduces the amount of advanced glycation end products. So it has like an antioxidant, anti-inflammatory effect. And so in that way, it reduces the sort of the effects on, where the proteins tend to entangle. It reduces the potential for entanglement of the proteins, which is a good thing because that means then the body can naturally clear it away. What basically, choline does, it actually blocks the production. So it actually, when they say blocks, we're talking about here, it doesn't prevent it completely. It sort of is lowering the amount that can be actually produced. So amyloid-β plaque are the hallmark pathology observed in Alzheimer's disease. It's more than just a beta amyloid plaque. The brain actually clears it. Melatonin plays a big role, and sleep plays a big role in clearing it. But obviously, if you can sort of reduce how much is expressed, because in some people that are more susceptible, especially those who have the ApoE44 gene type, they are more susceptible, or 4-3s, they are as much, and 4-2s. So that's a proportion, at least about 10 odd % of the population in any given country. So that's a sizable amount of people. And if they were to basically consume more choline, it would really help them, and it would be very protective. Plus taurine, because they do have less capacity in also the advanced glycation end product situation as well. So secondly, choline supplementation reduces the activation of microglia. Overactivation of microglia causes brain inflammation and can eventually lead to neural death, thereby compromising cognitive function. Choline supplementation reduces the activation of microglia, offering further protection from the ravages of AD, Alzheimer's disease. Mechanistically, the reduction of microglia activation are driven by alterations in 2 key receptors, the alpha-7 nicotinic acetylcholine and the sigma-1 receptor. A new report this year found that choline can act as an antagonist for sigma-1 receptor. These results confirm that lifelong choline supplementation can alter the expression of sigma-1 receptor, which thereby attenuates microglia activation. An antagonist is a substance that activates a gene receptor. So obviously, it's a very good antagonist. Devastating decline. Okay, in the science community, it is well understood that Alzheimer's disease causes harm to the brain long before clinical symptoms are made evident. And once these symptoms are identified, it is too late. Yep. The disease has become irreversible in addition to cause disorientation, memory loss, brain fog amongst the vegans and plant-based community is quite endemic, and from younger and younger ages, these people are going to suffer a lot of problems. I implore them, if you know vegans, please share this video. Please, recommend choline supplementation. At a minimum, they should be basically choline and taurine to protect their brains, because they are a greater vulnerability. And with a lot of the sugar that they consume, the high amounts of sugar, they increase the advanced glycation end products that sort of affect on the beta amyloid in terms of creating all those tangles, which makes it much harder for the brain to clear out. Okay, getting back to this. I've just lost my spot. Yep. And once these diseases has become irreversible, in addition to causing disorientation and memory loss, the disease causes loss of motor control in those who are afflicted. Motor control also is, you'll find in Parkinson's, you'll find in diseases like multiple sclerosis, ALS, and a couple of others that I can't think of at the moment. Approximately 6 million individuals are living with Alzheimer's disease in the US currently, and the disease is projected to afflict 14 million Americans in the next 4 decades, because we're eating more kibble, we're eating less animal foods. Economically, the costs associated with managing Alzheimer's are expected to exceed 20 trillion in the same time span. It's just horrendous. It's going to destroy our health system. It's bad enough we've got so many diabetics on top of that, So diabetes is another problem that basically increases advanced glycation end products, exacerbating these conditions, and fatty liver and stuff like that. So, and choline actually ameliorates that, reduces the conditions of fatty liver, improves liver function. And I've provided that information in a much older video that's, I think, about a year old now, or a bit over that. Do go and check it. To develop more effective treatments, we first need to understand the disease itself, which is one of the tallest order facing modern medicine today. I think this study has actually shown, quite clearly demonstrated, that in mammals, if you give them high doses of choline, you reduce the conditions even in animals that you're inducing it. Within humans, you're not inducing it. It just happens because they're on a species inappropriate diet. They're eating garbage, basically, that is devoid of important key nutrients. So especially choline. Choline is absolutely so critical, throughout life. It's not, it's a non-negotiable thing. You got to be eating. If you're not eating organ meats, you're not eating eggs, and you're not eating meat, you will not get enough choline. It's simple as that. I've showed the information in the previous video. Go and check that out, and you'll actually see the amounts. The reality is, or you can actually go to the description section where you will find a link to different sites that provide that information, exactly what content of choline is in different foods. And you'll be shocked how low some things are. So the majority of foods, and it's only some foods that are very high, and it's all animal foods. And if you're not eating them, you're not getting enough. Simple as that. So you're heading, and I think this is the reason for the dementia and Alzheimer's explosion. If you go back to the 50s and 60s, our diet was 2/3 animal foods, 1/3 plants. And when it came to, neurodegenerative diseases, Alzheimer's, dementia, and all that, it was pretty much unheard of, or very rare. Then we had the food pyramid, then the food guidelines of the 70s telling us to go low fat. We turned that upside down, our diet of thousands of years. We blamed meat for what was the seed oils and the refined sugars that were being introduced in the 30s, the late 20s, the 30s, and the 40s, especially in the war years. And then by the 50s, we had we started consuming much higher levels of seed oil, much higher levels. And a lot of these diseases, cardiovascular disease, smoking as well, around those periods as well, cardiovascular disease, different other disorders, diabetes and a couple of other things started to rise, but it was primarily cardiovascular disease. It was only when we started to switch to high carbohydrate diets that basically our health went to hell in a handbasket, pretty much went to hell, and since then we've had an explosion of all sorts of diseases. So yeah, it's not accidental. It's inflicted by our authorities who are misguided by poor science and charlatans like Ansel Keys, who was an economist and an eel physiologist. He wasn't even a human physiologist. He basically got in bed with the food industry. He created the K rations for the military, got in bed with the military industrial complex that built in America, and basically the rest is history. Dominated all these organizations and bullied his way in getting his way. An absolute charlatan who was who had an ego so big, a lot of people feared him. He was a psychopathic, absolute criminal that actually has caused a lot of harm. I would say I would put him on the same pedestal as some of those who have performed, great acts of crimes against humanity. I'd put him in the same league. So, so we'll just move on to develop more effective treatments. We first need to understand the disease itself, which is one of the tallest order facing modern. Yep, I've already read that. Women are at a particular increased risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. This study shows that the simple addition of choline in the diet through life can reduce AD pathology in those most affected by the disease. Additionally, these results have implications of other neurodegenerative afflictions where activation microglia in rampant, says Villacruz. It doesn't surprise me, women, because women tend to be more following the guidelines. They tend to be they consume less animal foods compared to men. So it doesn't surprise me that Alzheimer's and dementia and all these are more prevalent amongst women. So ladies, start eating your eggs, bit of liver, and more meat. Do what our ancestors did, and you'll be in better state in the future. Guidelines for dietary choline. Prior research concerning Alzheimer's has indicated that there is no one factor at play, rather multitude of factors that are believed to contribute to the development of disease, including genetics, age, and lifestyle. Obviously, genetics do play a role. I've talked about the ApoE44, which makes you more vulnerable. I've also talked about the genetic the PEMT gene in the previous one that basically makes you susceptible because it is a gene involved in choline metabolism. So, and I've got that bad gene, yes. So, and there's a number of other people that have. It's quite prevalent, especially in Northern European populations. Slightly less of a problem in Southern Europeans, but Northern Europeans, it's nearly 56%. So it's quite substantial part of the population that are very vulnerable to a choline deficiency. Anyway, And rather and yep, additional studies suggest that diet can have a significant effect in increasing or lowering the risk of cognitive decline. In recent reports suggesting that plant-based diets may be detrimental due to the lack of important nutrients, including choline. Yeah, Chi. That's the one that I talked about before. Um, Another recent report found that the increase in cases of dementia in the UK, United Kingdom, may be associated with a lack of recommendation for choline. That was the one that I covered about the UK. In the diet throughout life, in fact, as of August 2019, AD and other forms of dementia are now the leading cause of death in England and Wales. Wonderful. What an achievement. It's the leading cause. Fantastic. The current established adequate intake levels of choline for adult women, older than 19 years of age, is 425 milligrams a day and 550 milligrams a day for adult men. The converging lines of evidence indicate that even the current recommendation daily intake may not be optimal for the proper aging process, especially in women. So, these guys are saying that looking at the evidence, it's not looking very good. They were giving high doses to the rats. When we talk about high doses, we're talking double. We're talking about a gram or more. To get a gram or more, I've shown you, you've got to be eating a large steak a day and a couple of eggs a day or some liver. Otherwise, you're not getting that gram. And if you're not getting that gram at least as a minimum, let alone people who may have the SNP and all that, they could even be more vulnerable. So yes, that's why I pack in an extra, a bit of additional supplementation. I'm not taking any chances, as you can understand. This is relevant given the higher incidence of AD seen in women. This suggests that the additional choline in the diet may be beneficial in preventing neuropathological changes associated with the aging brain. The tolerable upper limit of choline unlikely to cause side effects in adult female males of 19 years of age or older is 3,500 milligrams, so 3.5 grams, which is 8.24 times higher than the 425 milligrams a day recommendation for females and 6.36 times higher than the 550 milligram recommendation for males. Our choline supplementation dietary regime was only 4.5 times the RDI, which is well below the TUL and makes this a safety strategy, Villacruz says. So what we're talking about, equivalent for humans, is what we're talking about here, which is what they used in the rat sort of studies, just so we've got an idea. And it was females, so 425. So basically, they were doing about nearly 2,000. So, based on this research, I increased. Sometimes, like tonight, I basically had 6 eggs. Most of the time I have about 4 eggs a day. But, on occasions, so that would be 113. It would be about 17 eggs for that amount in that regard. Times 1.3. So the sort of amounts found in chicken, liver, and beef, in steak. So we've covered this before, 55 per 3 ounces. I'll just copy that. So, I mean, I showed it last time. I'm not going to do the calculations again. I was getting over from the food over 1.2 to 1.3 grams, and I basically supplemented 1 gram every single day, unless I have 2 big steaks a day. Sometimes I just have one with a couple of eggs. I just don't feel hungry, and when I don't, I add, as I've said before, when I don't have as much in terms of food, getting close to, and I'm not always hitting the 1900 mark or 2000 or whatever. It's usually anywhere between 1500 to 1900, but I'm getting plenty in that regard. It's only when I'm just around 1 gram from food, I double it. That's the only time I double it and supplement. And I've discussed this before with you guys on live streams about what I do in that regard. So yes, my focus is in getting good levels. Anyway, choline can be found in various foods, according to the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, with high levels of choline are found in chicken liver, 3 ounces to 47 milligrams, eggs, 1 large egg with yolk, 140. That's a large egg, 147. The general caged ones, remember I said, are about 113. So the caged ones, so if you get the lowest quality egg, you'll still get 113. That's what I base my measurements on, to show that if you get that amount, because not everyone, some people live in a food desert, not everyone can afford, like I can, pastured eggs that have got 147 per egg. Most people are going to get caged eggs, which only have about 113. That's the reality. I have to provide you with that information about, what it is. Anyway, so beef, grass-fed steak, obviously. Most people are not getting grass-fed steak, so just keep that in mind. But when it comes to beef, it's not a steak. It's very small. It's only a couple of grams, so you don't lose a lot. So there's one case where grain-fed is not as big an issue when it comes to choline. So and that's basically 3 ounces, which is 85 grams, and that's 55 milligrams. Wheat germ, toasted, 55, not as bioavailable. So, plants just don't cut it. That's the only one. And you're not going to be eating a whole lot of wheat germ. I mean, give us a break. It's not going to happen. As I've said, milk, 8 ounces, 38. Most people are going to be drinking a large glass of milk, which will basically give you 16, so 76 milligrams. Brussels sprouts, it's one of the plants that are a bit more, but that's a whole cup. So to get up to those quantities, you need, remember, well over a kilo. So nobody's going to eat that amount of greens. Let's be realistic about this. It's not going to happen. Additional vitamin supplementation containing choline, and that's basically what people who are basically on plant-based, they should be supplementing. Simple as that, because their diet is just not going to cut it. Let's be honest about this. And most even people on SAD diets. Remember, these people nowadays on SAD diets are only consuming about 1/3 of their calories are coming in from a diverse animal foods, dairy, bit of cheese and stuff like that. But they're not actually having a lot of these SAD dieters are not having as much meat. It's more, other things. And they're not even having eggs. Eggs is, it's not big. People buy and have a few eggs here and there, but, at most they sort of have 1 egg a day because they've been told, 1 egg a day is safe. More than 1 egg a day could be dangerous, which is bullshit. Absolute bullshit. As I've shown that study of that 88-year-old that outlived his parents, in terms of had no longevity special things, was consuming 25 eggs on average per day for multiple years and all that because he was addicted to them, had no problems whatsoever. It's absolute nonsense. In terms of the Bradford Hill criteria of, when you apply the strict rules of epidemiology, you should have a dose dependent. Bradford Hill was the guy that actually did the research on tobacco. You should have a dose dependency. When something goes up, it gets worse. When something goes down, it gets better. You see that with tobacco when you have high levels of statistical odds ratios of 10 to 30. When it comes to animal foods, they are lower than 2. They are 1 point something. Like the processed food is about, like processed meat is about 1.17, which is 17%. That's below 2, an odds ratio of 2. You have to be 100% just to get to a 2. And at 2 is just the bare minimum to generate a hypothesis. You can't infer anything at that level. And even at 3, it's the top end of a hypothesis. Most epidemiologists talk about, they do have differences on the opinion, between 6 to 9 is when you can start saying that there is a strong statistical relationship, but it has to be over 10, anywhere between 10 to 30 to basically be, which is thousands orders of magnitude in observational, because these are not clinical studies. These are observational, free living people, not controlled, with a lot of confounding variables. So in order to basically satisfy an observational research study to infer, not to prove causality, but to infer causation, that the most probable thing is that this vector is basically the likely causal, causing this condition. Like, there's a strong, thousands of orders of magnitude when it comes to a coronavirus or to a flu or to this causing this disease. It's statistically very highly associated. There's no confounding. It's, one single factor that's being looked at. It's massive orders of magnitude, 30, 40, 50 odds ratios. That's the sort of stuff you need to pin it, not some pissy little thing which is 1 point something. For general meat, it's 1 point. This is how we've got crazy people out there saying that it's as carcinogenic. Absolutely garbage. Something that we've adapted and eaten as a species for thousands of years. That we would have less adaptation to that, which we've eaten for thousands of years, compared to basically kibble or modern day grains and stuff like that we've only been consuming for the last couple of thousand years, which haven't even had time to genetically adapt appropriately. Give us a break, you'd have to be absolutely a moron to accept that logic. It just makes no logical sense. And it's the reason why we have all these diseases, because these animal foods are very dense in these important nutrients, B12, taurine, choline, all these sort of things that the body needs, fat-soluble vitamins, even a lot of the water-soluble vitamins are very high. You talk about, for instance, a critical element in the energy production, through important enzymes. Thiamine, where's the highest source? Pork, bacon, we used to have bacon and eggs in the morning. No wonder we were getting enough. And, important for energy production, NAD. Now everybody goes and gets NAD precursors because they hear from David Sinclair they can basically live forever, which is a lot of bullshit. But anyway, the reality is, what's one of the best sources? In plants, it's coffee, just to give that away. Most other plants have absolutely very little. And the best animal source, again, pork. Yes. Yes, that little piglet comes to the rescue again. Anyway, additionally, let's take a look at the populations. Sardinians, larding, and pork. Okinawans, Icarians. Yeah, number of populations around the world that have got longevity. Pork is at the center of a lot of their meat consumption. Say no more. Very dense in very important micronutrients. Anyway, additional vitamin supplement containing choline, for example, choline bitter tart and choline chloride are widely available at affordable costs. That's true. Vitamin supplementation containing choline, particularly relevant for those who are on plant-based diets. Do you hear that, vegans? Very important that you get your supplements in, especially this one, if you don't want to end up demented, and make sure your kids are getting them as well. Critical. Effects of choline. All plants and animal cells require choline to maintain their structural integrity. Yes, their structural integrity. Yes, exactly. And we're not talking about structural integrity of a Starship Enterprise here. We're talking about your cells. Very important. It has long been recognized that choline is particularly important for brain function. The human body uses choline to produce acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter responsible for functioning memory, muscle control, and mood. Choline also is used to build cell membranes and plays a vital role in the regulating gene expression. Additionally, a new report in January 2019 found that choline acts as an antagonist for sigma 1 receptor and also implicated in AD pathogenesis. In this study, researchers used a water maze to determine whether the mice with AD symptoms like that received long life supplementation of choline exhibited improvements in spatial memory. It also found that this was indeed the case. Subsequent examinations of mice tissue extracted from the hypothalamus, a brain region known to play a central role in memory formation, confirmed changes in toxic amyloid-β reductions in microglia activation, which reduced brain inflammation. So obviously, they kill these little rats. They examined their brains and saw that those who had the choline didn't have the damage that we usually see associated with Alzheimer's disease. Very important. Now, obviously, we can't kill humans and test them. That's why I mean we have to use rats. So anybody asking me, oh, why don't we do these human studies? Well, you'd probably have to bring somebody like Idi Amin or Hitler or, one of these people back to basically do those sort of things, because they don't have a problem with doing these sort of nasty experiments on humans, but the rest of us do. So they're not going to happen. So we have to use mice. They are a mammal, very similar to the rest of us. So we can do these tests and validate this sort of stuff. And if you're not satisfied with this, well, stay on a deficient diet and become demented is your only other course. Due to alterations of key microglia receptors induced by choline, the improvements in behavior may be attributed to the reduction of microglia activation. We found that lifelong choline supplementation altered the alpha-7 nicotinic acetylcholine and sigma 1 receptor, which may have resulted in the reduction of disease associated with activated microglia, Velazquez said. These receptors regulate CNS immune response, and their dysregulation contributes to AD pathogenesis. The study's significance establishes beneficial effects of nutrient supplementation in females throughout life, and the Chinese one confirmed that in males. Our work nicely complements recent work showing benefits in mice as a lifelong supplementation regime. No one has shown lifelong benefits in female AD mice. That's what is novel about our work. So they just basically say, oh, we did it in females. Okay, you did in the Sheilas, the Chinese did in the guys. Yep, good. You got the same results. Pat yourselves both on the back. Good to know. And we need studies in because there are differences between males and females, and we need that sort of stuff. But you know, they get so excited, don't they? Anyway, yeah, yes, perverse pleasure. Anyway, choline is an attractive candidate for the prevention of AD as it is considered a very safe alternative compared with many pharmacological shit. That's me adding a bit of, you know, opinion. At 4.5 times the RDI recommendation daily intake, we are well under the tolerable upper limit, making this a safe preventative therapeutic strategy. All through the results improve the understanding of the disease. The authors suggest that clinical trials will be necessary to confirm whether choline can be used as a viable treatment in the future. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I think that they need to combine choline with taurine because they do work slightly different, where taurine will reduce the amount of advanced glycation end products, and this will reduce the level of entanglement. That means the tangles, the protein tangles that happen, which makes it much more difficult to clear the stuff away. So I think both synergistically, and we know choline, taurine biosynthesis in the body declines with age as senescence goes up. So that's another factor. Less viable cells to be able to do a lot of the biological functions in the body, transcription factors and stuff like that. Obviously, less energy, you can do less because as CD38 goes up, NAD goes down, senescence is rising as a consequence of, well, we know that because the senescent cells actually secrete CD38 enzymes that upregulate its production. So to basically, it's a predictive mechanism basically to inhibit NAD so we don't have too much proliferation of damaged cells. Senescent cell is basically is a parked cell, so it doesn't cell divide any further because it could potentially, it's too damaged, too vulnerable to going to the next level, which we know what it is. The C word, exactly, cancer. So they are mechanisms. That's why I say people like David Sinclair and others that are out there pushing certain supplementation, certain strategies, very risky, boys and girls. Stick to senolytics, get rid of the stuff and allow the body naturally to shift back to improving energy production and give it good food to support the healthy cells to get sufficient energy production. That's the golden rule. And those are animal foods, which are much higher in the precursors for NAD. Anyway, so this is the actual study. I'm not going to read it because it's a very, very long study. But here we can actually see lifelong when it comes to spatial memory deficits. They saw improvements in those rats. This is the part with the reductions in amyloid-β. So improvements there. People can go and check this study out themselves. This is the activation of the microglia. It will take you a while to read it. So even if you're competent in reading studies, it will take you some time. It's quite a few pages long. So do it on a weekend, basically, is what I'm saying. Here is also the expression of alpha-7 nicotinic acetylcholine receptors. So you can actually see sigma-1 receptor. So we're seeing a reduction of this within the microglia. And then there's just the discussion which goes through a lot of this sort of stuff and all that. And the nice thing is these researchers have got no conflict of interest, none to declare. So They're not doing any bullshit research work for pharmaceutical companies or producing garbage. And no wonder they're looking at because we've seen basically all the different stuff that's been put out there by Big Pharma has pretty much failed miserably to deal with this problem. Because basically we saw the explosion of this in the 90s and onwards. And what happened through that period? We saw that processed foods went through the roof and animal foods declined. Eggs declined, dairy declined, all animal foods, beef declined, pork declined. The only thing that went up was chicken. Yeah, so a lot of the animal foods that we traditionally consumed have declined quite heavily. And even though chicken didn't go up massively. And remember, since the 1970s, the population has doubled. So that going up, is basically much less compared to the actual growth of the population. So really, in comparison to the 70s, it sort of went down. It just looks like it's gone up because of the doubling of the population and, all this sort of stuff, the way the statistical the increase that has actually happened. But when you look at, I've got it the wrong way around. When you're looking at the increase in the population, you realize that it's not keeping up with the population. So our primary intake of nutrients nowadays is anywhere between 2/3 to 70% plant-based. And going 100% plant-based isn't going to save us, it's going to make us even worse. We've already seen, I've done the previous videos and actually shown quite clearly the detrimental effects of a plant-based diet to your brain health. If you're ideologically driven to stay in that realm, I beseech you. I really hope you wake up to yourselves one of these days. But until you do, please, at a minimum, if you don't want to supplement your children with choline, and if they're very young, with taurine as well. Please just do it. If there are pharmaceutical grade stuff which isn't derived from animals that you can use that are vegan friendly, so do not neglect your children and even yourselves. You may wake up from the and realize that you're in a cult and you need to get out of it. So hope this information will help people understand the importance of choline in protecting the brain from neurodegenerative type diseases like Alzheimer's disease, dementia, and the likes, and Parkinson's and a few others, multiple sclerosis. As I've said, choline is essential, is critical. And the great thing about, and phospholipids, the great thing about eggs is they're packed with the stuff. So get a few more eggs into your diet is my recommendation. And, a bit of liver now and then. And if you're a vegetarian or vegan, mussels don't feel anything. They're a very good source of B12 and a very good source. Yes, they're an animal product, but at the end of the day, they are not cute and cuddly. They don't have feelings. They don't have a brain, and they don't feel anything. So basically, you might as well eat them because they're packed with minerals, very important minerals, which you guys are deficient. And, at least if you can put something like that, you're getting at least the essential fatty acids and B12 and a whole lot of important minerals, which will basically ameliorate and actually counteract a lot of the deficiencies in the rest of the foods you guys consume. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. I'll leave it at that. Thank you and see yous.